And I said, hey, man, like, I'm hitting him twice. Can I say any man with two hands has a fighting chance? That's what got Vince McMahon's attention. And Triple H grabbed me and he said, hey, he's not kidding. He loves you, kid. He's like, he's going to hire you.
Wow.
People ask me all the time, they're like, why does the hippie wrestle? It's like, it's all for the love of sport, you know, like, and I love wrestling so much that I have to go past my pacifist ways.
You know, a hippie, you got to put that over. You got to act like, you know, you're a hippie. You got to study what hippies are. Ambrose, just some of the best stuff. If you go back and watch it, him and I, we got along great. We were bummed out when we found out it was ending.
Rewind, recap, relive. For over 50 episodes, the revolutionary force in wrestling interview.
Our first guest has about a year in the business. He's making his name known. He is the Appalachian hippie. Please welcome Steven Meeks to the show.
Good evening. How are y'all doing? Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Anytime. No, it's awesome to have you here. Our next guest taught us all that any man with two hands has a fighting chance. He made his name known in WWE, sharing the ring with big stars Dean Ambrose, John Cena, AJ Styles, who he holds many victories over. Please welcome James Ellsworth.
Going on, guys?
What's up? How's it going? How you doing, James?
I'm doing fantastic. Hopefully you guys are as well.
Definitely doing well. And I always like to start at the beginning. Steven, I'll throw it to you first and really just learn about the beginning of your journey into the pro wrestling business, how it all came about, what your first steps were and everything like that.
Cool. Yeah, so I actually, as funny as it sounds, I grew up singing in barbershop quartets, and then when the pandemic came around, that 4 dudes in a room spitting on each other singing became super illegal. But my friend was still training wrestling, my good friend Casey King, and he invited me to come train with 2 local legends that I had no idea were like homegrown talent, Jillian Hall and Bobby Blaze. And I started training with them. And then after some time had passed, I began training under Chance Prophet in West Virginia as well. And now I came to North Carolina for college, and we're just grinding and trying to work the good shows and build the brand up.
No, definitely. That's great. And did you grow up a fan?
Yeah, I was a fan like most boys are, like as a young kid, and then I was a lapsed fan for a long time, like in middle school and high school, and then AEW, funny enough, started coming around, and I obviously recognized Cody and Jericho, so that's what got me talking to Casey when I would run into him at the mall and stuff, and yeah, he eventually invited me to come train.
That's awesome. I definitely want to get into your training too with Bobby Blaze and Jillian Hall. Really great names. But James, to throw it to you and your journey into pro wrestling, how did it all start for you?
Man, I graduated in June of 2002, and I was 17 years old. And as soon as I graduated, I took all the money I got from family members and friends for graduating, and I went to a wrestling school here in Baltimore. It's called Bone Breakers at the time. And trained with Axel Rotten, former ECW legend, who I really learned a lot from. I always tell people, young people, and it's good that he found someone or, some people to train with that have done this. I always tell people, like, find people that were successful in the business and train with them. Like Create a Pro right now with Pat Buck and Brian Myers, who was Kurt Hawkins in WWE. They've trained like the Acclaimed, they trained MJF, like, a lot of good people have come from that school. I think it's because, like, the guy like Kurt Hawkins, Brian Myers has, been to the WWE and been all around the world and learned his craft, and now he has that knowledge to pass on to others. So I was very fortunate to train with Axel Rotten, who was an ECW original, who did some USWA in Memphis for Jerry Lawler, who have traveled the world wrestling.
Yeah. I mean, that's super fortunate that you got to train with him for sure. And do you have any specific tactics that you walked away with?
Man, there's so much, like, you learn so much in the wrestling business. I've been in it. Next month will be my 21st anniversary wrestling. But man, like, he was very old school. People know him from ECW being like a hardcore guy and doing the Taipei death match and, swinging the chairs and stuff like that. But that's really, like, not all that wasn't his only, repertoire in the wrestling business. He really knew his stuff, and he always taught me less is more and feel the crowd out. Every crowd's different. And, you really, when you go out there, you might have a plan in the back of what you're going to do in a match. But when you go out there, that could all change because the crowd might not react to what you have planned. So you have to know how to work with the crowd and give them what they want to see. Just stuff like that, man. And like when I went to WWE, fast forward, 14 years after I started, like I saw like John Cena at house shows, especially doing the same thing that Axel taught me. Like he would go out there, he would call a couple things in the back, but he would go out there and pretty much work on the fly and feel the crowd out. And it was just magnificent to see, the best guy of this generation do exactly what I was taught to do.
No, that must have been so reassuring, definitely, seeing someone like that on that stage. And Steven, to throw it to you, you mentioned Bobby Blaze and Jillian Hall. I feel like, especially with Jillian, what we saw, like she could really give some great character advice. And we obviously Appalachian hippie, psychedelic sweetheart that you are. Can you get into maybe that aspect, or what are some tactics that you took away?
Jillian's obviously like you said, she's really heavy on the character work, and I mean that's who I spent most of my time training under. She was awesome. I mean, she blew me up like every chance she got with cardio, but I mean she was really big on characters, and with like the psychedelic sweetheart thing coming around, like I was talking to Bobby or Dylan or Casey or somebody, and I was like, I just want to be a sweetheart. Like I want to be the nice guy wrestler. And then somebody asked me like, well, what kind of sweetheart are you? And I was like, I kind of just tossed it around in my head and came up with the cute alliterative nickname and kind of ran with it. I mean, I'm a huge Grateful Dead fan. I grew up on the Beatles and psychedelic rock and all that good stuff. And yeah, so it just, I figured out a way to turn myself up to 11 that was semi-marketable and relatable, to people who also grew up on hippie culture and all that good stuff. So,
yeah, James, I'm curious, do you have any thoughts on that or character building?
Absolutely. Like, I mean, it took me a while, like in wrestling, like 5 or 6 years to like really figuring out who I was. And what I mean by that is like I'm 5'8", 165 pounds, and when I started, I was 5'8", like 125 pounds. So I was a very small guy, and I'm like, man, like character work is what I needed to really, really focus on because that was the only way I was going to get noticed. I'm athletic, like I could do moonsaults and all that, but I chose not to do a lot of that because it really beats up your body. And I never wanted to put myself in any easy situation where I would get hurt. It's already, every time you wrestle, you're already putting your body in danger every single time, no matter what. But so I had to rely a lot on character work, and it was very, very important. And it like, and any aspect of wrestling, it is, because if you don't have a good character, I don't care what you can do in the ring. If you're not interesting, I don't want to watch you. Like you know, like Ricochet is an awesome wrestler with an awesome name, very athletic, great looking guy. But his character, I'm just like, if he had like maybe like a little better of a character, he'd probably get to that main event level because he has all the other tools. But that's just a good example of like how like significant character work is. Like I'll go throw it back to MJF. Good looking guy. He's in great shape. But what separates him from a lot of the pack is that character work, that verbiage. Like he can connect with the audience just by talking. It's very, very important in every aspect of wrestling, and it's just like watching a movie. If it's a good character, you're invested in that character.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time that you said it was about 5 years in? Do you remember that moment that you found yourself character-wise?
So, before I was like, James Ellsworth in WWE, like my name was Jimmy Dream on the Indies, and I didn't have much of a character with the first 5-6 years, and then I was at a convention with Axel, just helping him out at his table, and I remember like looking over and seeing it's when Angelina Love and Velvet Sky started doing the beautiful people gimmick,
Right.
And I looked over there, and I had brown hair at the time, long brown hair. And I was like, I get these guys' gimmick. They're beautiful women, and they're the beautiful people, and they come out and they throw in people's face. I was like, I get that's so easy to get. I said, what if I dyed my hair blonde and acted just like them, but I'm not obviously as pretty as they are, and call myself Pretty Jimmy Dream, and people are gonna be like, this guy thinks he's pretty, like this guy thinks he's a good looking guy, like and I started doing that, and it just worked. I noticed the crowd when I would come out and do my gimmick, I was like spraying my hair with hairspray and wearing like fishnets and being all flamboyant. I remember people started react to that way more than they ever reacted to me before. And it's because I had a character now. I wasn't Jimmy Dream that I looked like Kid Rock, basically. Had long brown hair. I had like a pair of pants, wrestling pants, and I didn't have a character. It was just Jimmy Dream in my head. I was like, well, my name's Jimmy, and it's my dream to be a wrestler. So I just kind of put that together, and I'm following my dream. And I had like a dream catcher on my pants. It was
wow,
but
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, that was cool. But like, it wasn't much of like, okay, Jimmy Dream. Like, it wasn't much of a character. It was just a guy following this dream, and But as soon as I did that like pretty thing, acted all like I was, better than everyone else, and I was better looking than everyone else, and everything. I wasn't, again, fast forward when I started doing the stuff with Carmella, I did the exact same thing I did on the Indies with the Pretty Jimmy Dream character, other than like the pretty name. I just acted cocky and dressed cool and acted like I was the man. Like it does mean a lot when you have a good character, 100% for sure.
Oh, that's so cool. I love the transition. Now that I could totally see you playing a character like that, the Jimmy Dream, from what we saw in WWE. But Steven, were you always the hippie type of character going off of that, or was there a moment before that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was I was talking to Casey, and that kind of I had this idea I wanted to be just the nice, clean, squeaky clean, good old boy who just loves wrestling. And because I mean, I struggled a lot at the beginning with being aggressive, like just in like my striking and stuff, and blah blah blah. So I was trying to figure out a way to, how do I make my character like fit my weaknesses, or like how do I wrestle in a style that is like uh you know technically clean and not in any kind of way uh violent, if that makes any sense. But yeah, no, the having Casey ask me what kind of sweetheart are you really kind of got the ball rolling on the psychedelic sweetheart and just the hippie gimmick. But like he said, like in terms of like finding myself, I think it's just been through working really good heels like Sean Denny, who have been able to like help me out and just teach me a lot about the business and about how to work the crowds and when to really take your time and all that good stuff. Just good reps with good people.
And to throw back to James, I'd like to jump to the first time we saw you in WWE. I feel like a lot of people who saw you in the match with Braun may not know that you were a veteran even at that point. You were around for a while. So what was that like? Can you take us through the process of showing up to that match with Braun?
Yeah, so every week when you watch Raw or SmackDown or even AEW Dynamite, they have what they're called extra talent, that local indie guys that are sitting in the back, like, hoping to get an opportunity to be seen, whether it's, in a match, or you could be a security guard for the night. You could dress up as a doctor and work on somebody's leg. You're an extra, just like any other television show. That, like if you're watching Seinfeld, there's people in the background eating the meals and drinking the coffee in the restaurant as, Kramer and Jerry are talking. So I would always email WWE when they were coming to town, or anywhere like 200 miles or less. I would email them and say, hey, I'd like to be an extra talent, be, send a resume, be real respectful. And, they I started doing extra work like in 2000 and whenever Adam Rose started, 2014 or 15, when he started doing the Rosebud gimmick on TV, and you would
Yeah.
see all the indie guys dressed up as Rosebuds. So I was the cheeseburger a few times because every time I did it, I grabbed the cheeseburger outfit. And yeah, so that particular day, they were looking for somebody to wrestle Braun Strowman in his re-debut because he had originally debuted on the main roster as one of the with the Wyatts, as one of the
Right.
Wyatts, and this time they cooled him off a little bit, took him away from that, and they were going to bring him back to be his own character. And so I remember there were 6 of us there, the extra talent, and we're like, "Hey, one of you guys are going to wrestle Braun Strowman tonight. It's going to be real quick." And then Arn Anderson kind of said, "All right, guys, whoever throws the best punch gets the match." And he picked me first because I was the
Wow.
smallest guy there. Yeah, so I was the smallest guy out of the bunch, so he picked me to go first. So I threw a punch, boom. He goes, "All right, you get the match." He didn't even like check the rest of the guys. I don't like, which I was like, "Oh man,
Phenomenal fun.
yeah, these guys are gonna hate me." So anyway, he pulls me in the ring. He's like, "All right, now punch him," and he points to Strowman. I walked up and did it. He goes, "Good, you did it the same exact way as you did it over there to one of the other guys, which was an extra." He said, "So that means you're not like scared or just like nervous or anything. So that's good." And then I'm walking away and Byron Saxton comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, they wrote you a promo. Like we're doing this thing every week with Strowman where he's going to fight an extra talent for the next 6 weeks, and you guys get basically say your last words before he kills you." So so Jimmy Jacobs handed me the promo. He was the writer at the time, and I'm like reading it over, and I knew I was going to get to punch Strowman twice. So I asked Jimmy Jacobs, who I knew a little bit from the Indies before we were on some of the same shows together, so we were familiar with each other. And I said, "Hey man, like I'm hitting him twice. Can I say any man with 2 hands has a fighting chance?" I said, "I think it's a cool line." I was like, it's kind of play off of a Rocky 5. Rocky says, "I figure if a man has 2 hands, he has a chance." That's a line from the Rocky 5 movie.
Right.
And he goes, "Oh yeah, man, say it. That's a great line." I was like, "All right, cool." So like that's just crazy that like because he could have told me no and I would have never said it. But that's
Yeah.
crazy. That's what got Vince McMahon's attention. As soon as I said that line, I got his attention because like later on I learned from like Chris Jericho and Enzo who were in Gorilla watching the match while Vince was sitting there. I heard everything Vince said and was doing. So when I said that line, Vince was like, "Wow, that's a great promo." And then he started watching Strowman squash me, and I'm doing the facial expressions, and I'm selling, and I'm putting whatever I can into it. And then after the match, I get to the back, and Arn's waiting for me. Arn Anderson. He's like, um, "Hey, Vince wants to see you." I was like, "Oh man, I'm in trouble," because like I walked down the ramp and like you're not allowed to walk down the ramp. You're supposed to walk to the side of the ramp if you're extra talent. So I'm thinking he's going to yell at me from walking down the ramp, and he didn't. So I went and found Vince. He's like, "Hey, your facial expressions was great. Your verbiage was great." He goes, "Your selling was terrific. I have no choice but to hire you. I'll be in touch." It was
Wow.
crazy. Yeah. Like, what? It's like what? So yeah, that's how it happened, man. It's just one of the craziest wrestling stories ever, really.
Yeah, seriously. That is like going back to, I mean, that's a dream, right? You're living your dream. Is that the first time that happened? Like something like that, like an extra talent being hired basically on the spot?
I I mean, I'm not sure. Like I know there's been like the 1 2 3 kid. They brought him in, but that was an idea they had for him.
Right.
I know like Colin Delaney got hired after a few weeks when he was doing extra work. It was kind of like the same character as mine, but like not as pushed, or
Yeah.
maybe for whatever reason. But yeah, like I don't know. I just know when he said that, like I went to find Strowman to thank him for the match. Then I like sat down in catering and just like kind of stared at the wall, like, wait, what? What did he just? And then when I was leaving the arena that night, Triple H grabbed me and he said, "Hey, he's not kidding. He loves you, kid. He's like he's going to hire you."
Wow.
And he goes, "So just be safe and just wait for the call. And the call happened 6 weeks later. Like, I was like, I didn't get any sleep for 6 weeks. I was like, is he going to call? Like, is somebody going to call? And then finally, Vince called me and he's like, hey, pal, you ready to come to TV? We're ready for you. I'm like, let me check my schedule. Yeah, yes, I'm ready. Like it's just nutty. It's very, very crazy.
It's so crazy. It's cool that you did it yourself too with that line. Obviously, it's a line it's synonymous with you, but the fact that you came up with it yourself, I think, is really awesome too.
Oh man, like yeah, it would like I wouldn't feel the same way about it if somebody had written it down for me.
Yeah,
I would always give them the credit if it were that way, but it was just something, I don't know, it just clicked in my head because I knew I was punching him. If you go back and watch the match, I punch him. It's the first thing that happens. And then I go and I punch him again, and then he just wails on me. But I don't know, just because I knew I was hitting him twice, that it just popped in my head.
It popped there, yeah. Well, Steven, have you, obviously only a year, but have you had the chance to do any type of extra work for, I know you mentioned AEW early on was coming around, any type of extra work for a company yet?
No, not yet. Fortunately, I have a good friend of mine, Victor Andrews, who's local. He does a lot of extra work, and then being semi-connected with Firestar. I mean, all their guys are crazy talented, and a lot of those, like, a lot of them have had some opportunities lately to do some extra work and stuff. And yeah, it's coming. It's just I really connecting with Victor recently has taught me a lot in regards to doing that. I mean, I honestly had no idea where to start in regards to even reaching out, and Victor was kind enough to give me some valuable information in regards to that. So we're working on it. It's just we're trying to figure that stuff out.
I mean, absolutely, and obviously it will come. James, do you have any advice for Steven when it does come? How to go about something like that once you step through the doors? I'm sure it's overwhelming.
Well, yeah, I'm sure like Jillian Hall and all them are telling them, like, you just, no matter what, we live at a very, like, he's only a year in. It's a very different era where, like, when I started, man, you had to be, and he seems like a respectful kid, but you really had to be respectful. You had to shake hands, look people in their eyes, and just not sell anything around you. You had to be just, it was like the military when I started. Now it's a little more loose and a little more, people are just not as respectful. Some people as they used to be. This seems like a very respectful kid, but like, yeah, my advice would be if you go there, just be very respectful. Do what you're told. Don't do anything out the ordinary. Just act like it's another show. I know it's hard, especially when you see the arena for the first time, and if you get an opportunity to be in front of thousands of people to do a squash match or whatever, just like you're going to be nervous. It's going to be like overwhelming at first, but you just keep your cool, stay professional, and just tell yourself all I want to do was a good job. Because when I did that Strowman match, that's all day. I thought that was going to be my only WWE match ever. So I was like, I want to look back on this and know that I did a fantastic job, and so I can look on this the rest of my life. Go, that was my one WWE match, and I did a great job, and I feel great about it. Because you want to go in there and you're all nervous and you're messing up, and then you're really going to be down on yourself. So just stay cool, stay professional, and stay focused. If you ever get that opportunity.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, really great advice. And you mentioning obviously the Strowman match, you had some really cool moments with Braun afterwards, and you said you went to even go up and shake his hand to thank him for the match. What is your relationship like with Braun? Because I think it's cool throughout your career too. They always made callbacks, right, to that first match with Braun. So did you guys click?
Yeah, when he got released back in 2020, I saw him on the Indies a little bit, and man, like, I was clamoring for us to have a match on the Indies. I was I don't think, like, I love Braun. He's a great guy, but like the business, he hadn't been around wrestling as much as like I have. So like, he's probably only been around at this point, maybe like total 8 years or whatever. But like the business, like, it would have been really cool if him and I would have did an indie match. And I wanted to so bad, but he was trying to do his own thing with control your narrative and, EC3 and all. And I understood that. I didn't fit that mold. They wanted like straight wrestlers, and I'm like, a character comedy guy. But yeah, like no, when we see each other, very cordial. Like I remember seeing him in a bar a couple times, and I would always buy him a shot because like that was my first WWE match. And him and I are going to be linked forever, whether we like it or not. We're always going to be linked. But we do get along. We smile every time we see each other. We hug. I crack some jokes to him to make him laugh because he's a big teddy bear. Great guy. But yeah, like I feel like they either him or AJ. You haven't seen the last of like that character coming back for like a cameo appearance with. Like, as long as, like, Braun's there or AJ's there or Carmella's there, my character always has an opportunity or a chance to come back and do some kind of cameo appearance with one of those three characters,
Yeah, your character does seem like that type of, to pop up and make an appearance for sure. But Asuka was the last time with the wink, right? Was that the last time we saw James Ellsworth, that wink? Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I stayed, like...
And then you stayed, yeah.
Yeah, it was supposed to be, like, a one-shot thing, and then they winded up lasting 6 more weeks because it got such a good reaction. And I remember them telling me, well, but I guess you're here for a couple months. I was like, oh, cool. Like, and, like when they first released me, they didn't fully release me. Like, I came back like right away, pretty much. So like, they kept my contract going, which was very nice of them. And and like, I don't know, they treated me well, man. Like, you hear all again, it goes back to like the business is different. Like, these guys that go on Twitter that are on TV making good money and have won titles and have a lot of TV time and have a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of them. I won't name any names. I don't stooge or whatever. I don't like, I'm for the boys. I try to be, that guy that's just cool with everybody. But like, man, a lot of these guys go on Twitter and cry about their spot or what they're doing. Or I'm like, don't you realize you have like action figures hanging up in toy stores? Don't you realize you're making way more money than most people that are in America? Like, doesn't this like stuff click in your head and you're crying about what you're doing? Like, I don't know. Then I was never of that mindset. I was very appreciative of the opportunity that they gave me, the TV time they gave me, the dream that they gave me. And I never lost sight of that. And like, if I ever went back, whether it's cameo, a one-off, a 2-month thing, or a 10-year thing, I would never lose track of that, man. It's a very great opportunity to have.
It's really cool to hear you say that too. Very, very humble point of view, having traveled the world, been with them forever. It's awesome to hear you say that. And Steven, so we heard about the character building and your in-ring more style. And now another point that I want to get into are promos for you and what it's like. How have you been training for that? With the Appalachian hippie gimmick, do you change how you're cutting these promos? Is it more, are you evolving with them? Like, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I think my big thing is just trying to again just communicate to the fans like what's going on. I mean, I love video editing and production, and that's something that was one of the reasons I got into the business to begin with. I was recording shows for a local promotion, and then so now it's really cool to be able to do that with my own character. And I draw a lot of influence from stuff from my childhood, like that 70s show and Austin Powers. And, I mean, the Beatles cartoons, Grateful Dead imagery. Like I try to do what I can to put over the fact that I'm a hippie and that, we're not here for any nefarious means. We're here to love people through wrestling and, have a good time and all that good stuff. So.
Yeah. I heard you say that on another interview that you want to communicate with people through pro wrestling. I think that's awesome, and I think you do a great job too. I watched your YouTube channel, a plug, Steven Meeks, right? You put up like there's graphics that come up that convey to me that I'm watching. I think it's a big mushroom, and that to me means a hippie is about to come on and kick some ass. So that's cool.
Yeah, I made that entrance video in my car with like no AC, like
Wow.
10 minutes before the show. And then I had to airdrop it to the dude running the thing. It was so funny. But yeah, no, the little skull with the mushrooms coming out, that was thank Adobe licensed videos for that little cute transition, you know.
That's so cool. I love the extra added details, just like the dream catcher that you were talking about, James. I always love that little bit. Do you have any advice, James, when it comes to something like promos or just better communicating, you know, what you're trying to, you talked about character work earlier, but how could Steven go about evolving maybe the character more and communicating with the crowd?
Well, yeah, always, and I'm sure he's heard this advice before because he's around the right people, but you know, like you gotta act like, you know, even if you're at a place that you wrestle all the time, you have to go out there and act like somebody in that audience may have never seen you before. You got to explain who you are. You got to explain what you're doing there, who you're wrestling, and don't completely bury who you're wrestling. Don't say, "Oh, I'm going to come out here and kick your ass," and then you kick his ass, and you're like, "Okay, well, you told us he sucked, and you were going to kick his ass, and you did it." Like, say, "Oh man, like you know, I know you're mean. I know you're tough. I know you're nasty, but you know, I'm going to stand up to you, and I'm going to beat." You know, just I always tell people, don't bury your opponent, because if you bury your opponent in a promo and then you go out and beat them, like you didn't beat anybody. You told the world he sucked, and you beat him. So what? You go out there, you say like some stuff about, you know, how your opponent's a, you know, worthy opponent, but how you're going to be the better man that night, basically, especially. And then like your gimmick, like if you're, you know, a hippie, you got to put that over. You got to act like, you know, you're a hippie. You got to study what hippies are, you know, or just whatever your character is, that you got to put it over every time. You know, like when I say you got to pretend like someone in that crowd has never seen you before, here's a perfect example. You know how every single week Paul Heyman comes out and he says, "My name is Paul Heyman," because there might be a new person watching that show that has never seen him before. That's why he does that. He told me that. I was like, "Holy!" What?
Wow.
I'm like, yeah, like you know what blows your mind, right? Like,
yeah,
I picked up a lot of good, you know, obviously, how could you not picked up a lot of good advice while I was there. And like Enzo, we would come out, "My name is Enzo More, and I am," and people start saying it with you too. The people that do know it, they say it with you. It's stuff like that, man. So if you want to introduce yourself every time you walk out there, people are going to catch on, and then everyone's going to know who you are that's watching right then and there.
That's really cool. That did blow my mind, that Paul Heyman thing you just said, really. And
it's just crazy to think about. Like, wow, you really blows your mind when you think, well, that's why he does it. That makes all the sense in the world. You know?
I've been trying to indoctrinate my little brothers into being wrestling fans, and the only guy they've remembered so far is Paul Heyman. So that's, you know, maybe hey, it's working, right? New fans.
Yeah.
But James, so you get the call. You said it's 6 weeks until you get that call, and you're brought into SmackDown, very special part of SmackDown Live's history, 2016. A lot of people consider that like the golden age of SmackDown that we've seen in the last while. And how did that feel? I mean, so many big names. You said you picked up so much great advice. You had Daniel Bryan, Shane McMahon, but then you also had Dean Ambrose and AJ Styles, who you worked with more closely. What was that first day like? Any early advice, first day advice you remember?
Man, like when I first got brought back, it was in Philadelphia, which was cool. It's only an hour and a half from my house because I live in Baltimore, 2 hours away, so I got to drive. And it was like, so when I got there, they had the card written out, and it said main event: James Ellsworth and AJ Styles versus Dean Ambrose and John Cena. And I was like, what is that? And they were like, "Oh, well, the Miz is going to come out and beat you up before you get to go out there." I'm like, so I learned very early that WWE is the land of surprises. Like, so don't get too excited. You know, I saw that on there. I was like, wait, I'm about to wrestle John Cena and Dean Ambrose, and I'm teaming with AJ. Like, what's going on? And then, you know, the first episode of SmackDown I was ever on, the Miz came out and beat me up, and he took my spot and teamed with AJ. So when I left that night, they're like, "Hey, we're going to bring you back in a couple of weeks, and you're going to wrestle the Miz for the Intercontinental title." I was like, "Oh, cool." And I'm thinking, wait, like for the night. So I was like gone for like 3 weeks. I was like, in that 3 weeks, it did cross my mind, like, are they going to do like a big like underdog thing where like I win the Intercontinental title? You know what I mean? Like I was so, but like I said, they're the land of surprises. You got to be ready for anything, and you can't get your hopes up. I get the TV 3 weeks later. They're like, "Hey, you're wrestling AJ tonight, who was WWE champion at the time." He goes, and it's a non-title match. Moxley's going to be the ref. Well, Ambrose is going to be the referee. As soon as they said Ambrose is going to be referee, I'm like, wait, they're going to have me pin the world champion. And they're like, and he does a bunch of stuff, and you wind up winning, and we'll do a title match next week. It'll be a cool underdog thing. So it was exactly what I thought, but it's just a different idea. Like they just went with me wrestling AJ. And then that was the first time I was like truly nervous because I had so much respect for him as a performer and as a wrestler. I was like, what am I doing in the ring with him? Like this is, at the time, especially, the best wrestler in the world, and man, you got to be ready for anything. That's in any dressing room or locker room in the wrestling business, but especially WWE. And you can't get your hopes up about nothing. You got to have a thick skin, and you got to be ready for anything bad to happen and anything good to happen. You just got to stay ready and not get your hopes up and not get too excited. And that's the best advice I can give anybody.
Well, great segue, Steven. I'm curious what some of the bigger matches, I know you said you worked some great heels that really helped out, but some of the bigger matches in your career that you consider really pivotal and ones that caused those nerves for you and really how you dealt with them.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, bro, like I feel like just now I've come down from the nerves of just like doing this little podcast. Like I get mad anxious. Like my anxiety is terrible. So like but anyway, like you're saying, I feel like recently the most like the match that I had recently that really taught me a lot was JR Miller. I got to wrestle him fairly recently. He's I'm not sure who trained him. I know he's a North Carolina guy, but he's another young cat, and he's got a stable with the Zenith, and they're all super legit. And yeah, we had a match a couple weeks ago, and it was just like my thing is I want to wrestle your match because I don't know what the Steven Meeks match looks like yet. So like I'm trying to like be with confident heels who know how they want to, who know the story they want to tell. And then he gave me opportunity to tell a cute story. We did the cutesy comedy stuff in the beginning for me, and then he got the heat. He gave me a great idea for a comeback, and then it was just like it was a lot of fun. And then just some other great heels that have taught me a lot. Sean Cruz, he's another North Carolina guy. Sean Denny, he's great. Victor Andrews, even though I haven't gotten that match yet, training with Victor Andrews has helped out a lot. I mean, he's brilliant. Being fortunate enough to work with people on the fly, like CW Anderson and Jason Kincaid and Chance Prophet, obviously. Like they're all. I mean, I'm just super blessed to have been able to pick their brains, and I mean, especially all those guys who've done it at every level, and they just get it, and it's super great to be able to, even though I'm like non-traditional in the sense that I'm a flowery hippie, like people ask me all the time, they're like, why does the hippie wrestle? It's like, well, I love wrestling, and it's like when you play a basketball game with somebody, you don't like, it's all for the love of sport, and I love wrestling so much that I have to go past my pacifist ways to make this work, because this is my way. There was at once a moment where wrestling loved me, so now I need to love people through wrestling. So yeah,
that was, I mean, really well said. I love the rationale to why the hippie wrestles, because I heard you say you faced blowback for that too. So that's really cool. You came around and were able to come up with a reason for that. And all really great names that you named. That I definitely knew a few of those. James, so you mentioned those nerves were big for you when you got into that match with Styles. How did you deal with it? Like, what's the pre-match for something like that look like for James Ellsworth?
Well, back in those days, a lot of pacing back and forth. But like before I go out, I always say a prayer, and I'm like, hey, let everybody in this match be okay, let everything go well, and I'll talk to you when I get to the back. So a lot of that, and just stretching and breathing, just common stuff. But like, my little thing is always a prayer. And here's a little tidbit: like, I'll dump like a whole bottle of water on my head before I wrestle, just to hype myself up.
Yeah.
But man, like back then when I was working with him that first time, that was the most nervous I've ever been. And my advice would be not to be nervous. Just, I know it's hard, but that's when you mess up, when you're nervous. You got to be confident in yourself. There's a reason why you're in this position, because, you worked hard to get in this position, and they didn't put you in this position if they didn't think you should be in this position. So you just got to, talk yourself up before you go into a big situation like that.
The prayer, so you said just make sure everyone is okay in this match and everything like that. The next question I have for you is a moment that a scary moment, definitely, where it looked like AJ Styles might have actually saved your life, or at least saved you from injury, which is the Styles Clash moment. Can you describe that for us? What went wrong, and then immediately after, like what your conversation was like with AJ, because that was a great save.
Yeah. So like, if you look up on YouTube it's called this. Just type in 7 deadliest Styles clashes. When I knew I was wrestling that day, I went and found a spot in the arena and started watching AJ Styles matches, and that popped up. And it's like Roderick Strong, Steven Richards, Corey Graves, to name a few. Hayabusa, I think, actually broke his neck on it, or somebody did. I don't know if it was Hayabusa.
Yeah.
It was a Japanese wrestler broke his neck on the Styles Clash from AJ Styles. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm watching all these people take the Styles Clash wrong. So I found AJ. I'm like, hey, this is a rehearsal before the show. I said, hey, can I take the Styles Clash real quick? He's like, yeah, sure. Goes in the ring, does it. It's fine. All right. I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, just don't do anything. Just let me do it. Just hang there like you're hanging upside down and let me do it. I was like, all right. So we go out there, and when I know he's about to do it, I'm like relaxed. I'm okay. And he picks me up, and I thought he was just going to go right away, like when he had me hooked. And I got nervous for a second, like what was it? And then he went, and I wasn't ready like for it. It's completely my fault. I was not ready for it, and he put his knee down. His knee hit first, and he completely saved me from what could have been a very bad injury. But you're taught in wrestling school, like at that point, like I said, I've been wrestling 14 years, so always tuck your chin when you're taking a fall, and that's like the one move you don't do it on. And I felt like crap about it for like weeks. I was like, I can't believe I took that wrong. I was very hard on myself. And then he winded up doing it to me off the steps onto the arena floor. And I did it correctly, and I was over it after that. And I've been asked about it a million times since then. And I feel like because it happened on SmackDown, and it didn't happen like at Ring of Honor or at New Japan or at TNA, because if you look up those 7 deadly Styles clashes, you'll see all these great wrestlers: Roderick Strong, Corey Graves, Steven Richards, and it's like taking it the same way I did, or not worse. And I'm like, how do people not know about this? Then I go, oh, that's right. Like everyone watches WWE, and that's why they never get asked about it, because no one knows about it really.
A really great save, but yeah, I mean, it makes sense the way you just described it. And so you were hard on yourself. Did AJ have anything to say afterwards, or?
He goes, man, you're fine. He's like, just be happy that you're okay. He goes, it's just a brain fart, man. Like, you just got here. They're putting you in like title matches. Like you're nervous.
It's true. Yeah.
He goes, I can tell you're a worker and you know what you're doing. Don't worry about that. That's just not a move that you take. He's like, I was like, yeah, it was my first time taking it, other than when we did it in practice. He goes, yeah, just next time take it like you took it in practice. And he wound up hitting me that move like 20 some times on the house shows and everything, and I never did that again. But that's just that one. It's like having a beautiful person in front of you. You can have a handsome man or a beautiful woman in front of you, and everything about them looks great. Their eyes, everything looks awesome. blah blah blah. But if they have a black guy, you notice the black guy first. It's
Yeah.
great, you know. So,
that's a great analogy. Yeah. Well, so that's really cool that Styles was cool about it. And obviously he's in the news right now. He's heading the inaugural to go for the inaugural championship against Seth Rollins and Saudi Arabia Night of Champions. And I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Someone who was so close with AJ throughout your time in WWE, a big part of his time there too. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I got an opportunity to see AJ. It was an unfortunate circumstances. I ran into him at Jay Briscoe's funeral, and so that was the first time I'd seen AJ in a few years. And man, it was so cool seeing him, give him a hug, and we got to talk and everything. So that was a recent thing. It was unfortunate circumstances because I came up on the Indies with the Briscoes. They're from Delaware. I'm from Maryland. It's only an hour apart, so we would always see each other on a lot of indie shows. I got the opportunity to wrestle both of them a few times in tag matches. And R.I.P. him. What a great guy he was, and a great family the Briscoes are. And I'm so happy Mark's getting the TV time he so wholeheartedly deserves right now. But yeah, back to AJ. Yeah, he's a terrific guy. He's going for the world title. I would love for them to, have him win it because I'm pretty sure everybody feels like Seth's going to win it, as do I. Feels like that's what's going to happen. But it'd be like, it'd be great if he won it. Then I could tweet out, "Hey, now that you're world champion, I can come back and finish my story."
Always thinking. That's good.
Yes. Everybody's talking about finishing stories. What about art? Stupid stuff like that. But it's going to be a hell of a match. They're two of the best in the world. Seth is probably right now in 2023, in my humble opinion, as far as in ring, I feel like Seth is the best in ring performer in 2023.
I could agree with you. Something about AJ's in ring as a viewer, it's crazy to watch. I heard on that documentary they did when he did the match with Undertaker said he just gets it or something different. And I agree, always watching Styles just has something about him, a different style, right? But Seth, yeah, Seth is great too. It's going to be a great match, whatever it is. Steven, do you have any thoughts on it as someone rising right now in the ranks?
I'm looking forward to it. I think Seth, I don't know if it's just the afterglow of Mania, but since Mania and the big robe and everything, everything that he has done has just been perfect. I can't, the way that he just takes in the moment of the crowd just singing the song, that could go on for 15 minutes alone. But that dude doesn't even have to, I just can't, I just love it so much. It's so impressive. Big fan of his work. And then I grew up on TNA and that era of TNA, so I love AJ Styles obviously too.
Yeah, it's really cool. And James, a question I just thought of with what Steven is saying, being so close to a lot of these guys that are so great with working a crowd, any thoughts or experiences watching someone like AJ or Seth control a crowd like we're seeing them do right now?
But back to John Cena, man. On a lot of those house shows, he was working AJ in the main event, and he would walk out, and the crowd would be cheering AJ and booing Cena. By the time the match was over, the crowd was cheering Cena and booing AJ because, Cena could just change their minds. He just knew how, he was that good, man. And no wonder he was on top for as long as he was, because he's a magnificent storyteller, because that's all this wrestling is storytelling and getting people invested into the story that you are telling in the ring. And I used to enjoy watching that every night, him coming out and getting booed, but then by the time the match is over, he's getting cheered. It would just impress me so much, man.
It's such a skill. With the amount of people who were there too, to be able to just in the palm of your hands, couldn't even imagine. Another big moment for you, James, one of my favorite matches, period, Survivor Series, when you were named SmackDown team mascot. I love that there was so much going on in that match, and it kind of, for me, set a precedence for what I want to see in a Survivor Series match. I feel more than just elimination. Like there was story interwoven within that match. It was so cool, including you and Strowman, another callback. So what does a lead up to a Survivor Series match look like, and what was that experience like for you being in there with all that talent?
Oh man, I was in there with 8 Hall of Famers, it felt like.
Yeah.
And, man, I was just having a blast. Like we did the Raw before Survivor Series where SmackDown invaded Raw, and Jericho like put me on the list, which literally
Yes.
I get sent that video every day. Whether it's somebody tagging me on TikTok or Twitter or whatever, every day somebody sends me that video. Yeah, it was a terrific experience. Like you touched on earlier, that era of SmackDown, June 2016 to April after right at WrestleMania 2017. That was a special time, man. Like you had like AJ Styles was the champion, like Randy Orton was a part of the Wyatt family, and it was just so cool to see. You had the stuff like me and Moxley and Ambrose and I just goofing off and tormenting AJ. Dolph Ziggler and The Miz had this amazing rivalry for the Intercontinental title. Like the American Alpha, Chad Gable and Jason Jordan were on the show. Rhino and Heath Slater, all this unorthodox tag champs. The women, that's when Becky Lynch started, becoming a star. Alexa Bliss started becoming a star. It was just like an amazing, what was that? June to July, August, September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April. So that was just an awesome 9 months, man. If I Shane McMahon was there, Daniel Bryan, like you said, just all these cool characters. Talking Smack was a big part of that. The show we would do after SmackDown, because man, we were just killing it on that show. And yeah, like Survivor Series, that was probably at that era. That Survivor Series match, Raw versus SmackDown in 2016, was one of the best Survivor Series matches of all time, and I got to be a part of it, and I got to help eliminate Strowman, which was a big moment in that match. It's definitely a night I'll never forget. So it's definitely my top 3 favorite nights in wrestling.
Very cool. And a specific moment, another thing big that happened that night, Survivor Series, was the start of the revamped Brock and Goldberg. This is more of a specific question as a big Brock Lesnar fan. Were you backstage when that shocking victory, when Goldberg did beat Brock in like a minute or something? Were you like, what was the reaction like backstage for that? And did you have any interaction with Brock?
Well, I literally we were sitting there. It was a locker room sellout. We were all sitting there in a locker room watching the monitor. And Heath Slater wanted to run to get everyone beers, like, because Heath Slater's cool like that. And so he wanted to get us all beers. And when he came back, everyone was gone because the match was over. So he had like a 30-pack,
a bunch of beers. That's hilarious.
So the reaction was, boom, the match happened, and Brock got beat. Everybody just like was shocked and like it was like, oh shit, we were like, people were laughing at it, just like really. And but that was good television because that was such a shocker. And I knew it was going to lead to a big rematch at WrestleMania. I was like, no way they don't do a rematch at WrestleMania, and they did. And went down the way it did. It was good stuff.
That was really good stuff. Yeah. Shocking to say the least. And we were talking about controlling crowds earlier. James, a question for you. Do you have a favorite crowd to be in front of?
Wow, that is a great question. My favorite, man, that you touched on earlier, when I came back and took that Oscar mask off in Chicago. And Chicago, probably in the United States, is the most just rugged, awesome wrestling crowd. They gave me a reaction I'll never forget. And then we were in Glasgow, Scotland. If you look up, it was me, Kane, and Ambrose against Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt, and Luke Harper, who was another great guy who I miss dearly. That crowd was just so amazing that night. I'll never forget that either. But yeah, like Chicago, I would say definitely lives up to the hype.
That's cool to hear. Steven, I don't know how much you've gotten to travel. I know you said you started earlier on, kind of when the pandemic, all that. And then so this past year, you've been going strong. Any places you aspire to go travel to wrestle?
Yeah, I'm going to Colorado in August, and that's the first. I think that'll be a lot of fun. With like the little bit of traveling I have done, I mean, I can say that I love the West Virginia crowd. I mean, that's kind of where I'm from. And they just, I mean, it's still real to them, damn it. Like it's so good. And then North Carolina is a lot of fun. I mean, I've been in Ohio and Tennessee as well, and it's just I've been super fortunate to work for some really awesome promotions like FTC in Ohio. They gave me some of my first couple matches, and there's Dominant Championship Wrestling here in NC and Firestar Pro Wrestling, and we got United Pro Wrestling is happening on June the 3rd. Here in the next couple of weeks with the big main event with Juventud Guerrera and Sin Cara. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Nice.
And super fortunate to be a part of that show. And it's just right down the road for me. I'm currently based outside of Raleigh. So, but yeah, no, I'd love to be a part of Dark whenever it comes back. I was super bummed whenever they got announced that they were cutting that. Mainly because the Botchamania segments from Taz and Excalibur on commentary, bro, those are hilarious. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to make it to TV and travel the world and hug the world. Is like that's like the new Twitter gimmick is hashtag hug the world. Trying to spread peace and love through professional wrestling.
That's a great, I mean, it sticks too, right? Who wouldn't want to be a part of that journey? And you'll definitely get there. James, winding it down, there's a quick, another specific question for you. Just another person you worked very closely with was Dean Ambrose, or Jon Moxley, obviously now in AEW. You turned heel on Dean Ambrose. I want to know why you did it and what your relationship was with like him, obviously afterwards.
Man, we were so bummed out when we found out that was happening. Because
Really?
we were having so much fun. Yeah, oh my God. Like we were like, why can't we move on to something else together? Like after this, because it was just so, but the reason as Carmella had pitched the idea of her and I being together, and Vince just loved that idea so much. He had to get me away from Ambrose. And then they didn't even, they should have put over the story more. The reason why I turned on him was because I was facing the winner of him and AJ for the title the following week on SmackDown, and my doofus character believed that since he beat AJ Styles 3 times, he should help AJ win so he can beat AJ for the title. That's how they very fastly explain that. I think after the pay-per-view on Talking Smack, they should have explained it more, but they didn't. And the stuff I did with Carmella was fantastic, but that 3 or 4 months I had with Ambrose was just some of the best stuff. If you go back and watch it, and him and I, we got along great. We were bummed out when we found out it was ending. We were like, man, we can get more mileage out of this. And, yeah, but he's a great guy. Yeah. I'm very happy for him and Renee because she's an awesome person as well, and happy for everything they're doing.
No, totally. Very cool to see him doing everything he's doing right now, right, as Jon Moxley. Well, Steven, last question for you. Do you have any future goals, long-term or short-term, we should look out for? Obviously, the travel you mentioned, but anything else that we could keep our eyes open for Steven Meeks?
Yeah, just continuing to build an audience and connect with people at shows and give out the hugs and love on people. I mean, I'm like James said, I mean, I'm just really freaking happy to be here, bro. Like, I mean, it honestly doesn't even make sense. Like a lot of it, like I mean, like this silly Beatles song says, I mean, nothing is real. Like, it's just, I mean, even this is such a fever dream of an hour. we've all just been hanging around shooting the shit, and I'm super thankful, and yeah, I continue to love people through wrestling and getting to travel. I mean, it's all such a incredible blessing. And
well, Steven, where are you at June 17th? Are you close to Winston-Salem, North Carolina?
So yeah, I'm basically like 3 hours away from Winston-Salem.
Because we do these taco margarita festivals, and I always book wrestling during them. Like I'm like traveling the country doing this. I find local wrestlers in a local ring, and I've already got the ring and everything. Tracy Myers out there in North Carolina.
Yeah,
who I am very.
Email.
Yeah, so he's renting me his ring and all. But yeah, we do these taco margarita festivals, and wrestling's just entertainment during it. There's usually thousands of people there. But I don't know, if you're free June 17th, get my contact or my Facebook. Find me on Facebook.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And we'll have you out there June 17th, because I pick up on people very easily, and I can see you're a humble, nice kid that's hungry to get there and learn. So I'd love to have you if you want to do that June 17th in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, I would love that. I've had a lot of friends work some of your taco margarita shows.
Oh, really?
So it'd be a perfect.
They tell you how goofy I am. So hopefully they said nice things about me, because I'm sure they did, because they actually met me and were around me. So I'm sure they did.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's really cool. That's a first, I gotta say. In 60 episodes, that's a first. Getting booked at the end. That's
the world. Help me hug the world.
Yeah, get a hold of me on Facebook. That's the easiest way. My wife and I is the profile picture there. Just look up James Ellsworth on Facebook. It's my wife and I. I know she's not photoshopped. I get overachieving more with her than I did with WWE, but yeah, that's me. So. Just message me on there, and I'll give you all the details.
Yes, sir.
That's an amazing way to finish. Last question for you, James. If you have any advice, you've given so much great advice. Any lasting advice for Steven or any young stars watching the show right now?
Yeah, like I said earlier, man, if you're going to get into the business, find somewhere to train, that the people that are training you did this for a living, made it somewhere, have a little bit of a name for themselves, like a Devon Dudley school or Kurt Hawkins, or a Booker T has a school. Like, there's so many people. Get trained by them. Always just have fun with this, man. Like, so I think we live in an era where a lot of people in the business try to make this not fun, and we all forget we all wanted to do this when we were kids, and it's supposed to be a good time. So just leave all the gossip and all the BS and all that. Like, leave that to everyone else. Just have a good time while you're doing it. Learn your craft. Try to become as good as you possibly can at it. So you can, eventually make some money at it. But no matter what, have a good time with it and have some fun with it.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. That brings us, so that's the end of the episode.
Rewind, recap, relive. For over 50 episodes, the revolutionary force in wrestling interviews.